Hello, this is Bob Johnston, and I wanted to give you a quick overview and demonstration of our technology product IQM Studio from Critical Logic. So I think you've all seen our profile page here. So let me just jump in. I'll try to keep this brief. So IQM Studio is our product you can license and buy and install. What is IQM Studio? IQM Studio replaces test design and eliminates coding for automation. That's a pretty bold statement, but I'm going to show you how we actually do that. So how we do it is by generating tests and scripts from models of your application intended behavior. And we'll take a look at those models and what they look like and how you build them and how they generate tests here in just a moment. Why we do this is because this technology brings much more effective test design. It makes sure that we test everything, that we don't have extra tests, we don't have missing tests. It's very efficient in that you don't have to write and maintain test cases, test libraries. This is automatically going to create tests and maintain those tests for you, and it's going to provide super high coverage, making sure everything that you include in the model is tested somewhere at least once. So what, how, and why? Let's take a look at the overview here. Our basic architecture is that we start with intended behaviors and we build a model from them. What you see there is what's called a cause-effect model, and it's built on the idea that there's logic circuitry almost within the requirement behavior. So if you do this and do that, then you have this option. If you take this option, then this should happen, this should happen. If you do this, this should not happen. These are the inputs and the effects that are described in your intended behaviors. Your intended behaviors can take any form. They can be requirement documents, epics, user stories, features, use cases, wetware, whatever. We can reverse engineer. There's a variety of input for the intended behaviors. We just generally call those requirements, but those requirements and rules for the intended behavior are turned into a model. You have to learn how to do these models, but it's very straightforward. Once you build one of these models of your intended behavior, our technology, IQM Studio, will generate test scenarios. So it'll generate enough test scenarios to make sure every path in that model is covered and nothing is left out and everything is consistent. Everything gets tested. And the test cases are designed for human readability in various formats. We'll see that in here in a second. But in addition to that, once we generate those test scenarios, we can then configure our IQM Studio to also generate automation code or an automated script for each one of those test cases. The automation code we generate is your choice. We can generate various kinds, almost any kind of automation technology you're using, from UFT, Selenium, Ranorex, Rapise, any technology you're using. We could almost certainly generate automation code that's usable by that tool. Okay, that's our high-level architecture. So one of the things that we've been talking to the Orca team about is the big idea. And our big idea here is that using tools like Swiftly and our IQM Studio, we can actually generate requirements. And if you're familiar with Swiftly, I hope you are, that the ability for Swiftly to generate epics and features and scenarios from templates by simply interviewing the people about what behaviors they want in their application, they are able to generate in a very slick way a set of requirements for that project. Then we can in IQM Studio can take those requirements that were generated by Swiftly and turn them into test cases and automated scripts. So our technology, as we're showing here, we then have to manage those tests and we have to also automate those tests. So the management of those tests can be done by a whole variety of test management tools in the industry today, as I'm showing you here. And again, a wide variety of automation tools as well. So this means virtually any type of application web testing, mobile test, API data, any kind of testing at all that needs to be done. If you can define it in Swiftly, we can then generate the tests and the automation to make all of that work. So our big idea is to replace a lot of that manual and inconsistent work done by test designers, automation coders, test managers. This all automates much of that process. We think this is a pretty cool and pretty big idea. Okay, so let me show you what I'm going to demonstrate here. I'm going to just demonstrate my example. We've taken a very simple Swiftly product that we've developed some requirements in for particular epics and features. We're going to then show how those look in IQM Studio, how we've brought those requirements or those features and scenarios into IQM Studio, and then how we then look at that as a model and then generate test cases that we're actually, in our example, going to store in the Spira test tool from Inflector for test management and test coverage. And we're also going to generate automation code, again, a tool from Inflector called Rapise. So let's go ahead and switch over to the demo. So this is our welcome screen, or our dashboard for IQM Studio. We are looking at here our major function sets. This is our modeling, generating, testing, and building models. This is our automation technology where you can build and manage an automated framework. We'll take a quick look at these things. This is our synchronization function where we can actually sync our test cases up with a test management tool like Spira Test or ADO or something like that. And this is our trace function where we can actually import and connect to a tool like Swiftly and bring in their requirement sets and manage the requirement sets so that we are aware of what requirements we're testing and modeling against. So let me go ahead and just jump right into modeling and show you the heart of what we're doing. So this is our modeling workspace, and I'm going to go ahead and open a model here. I'm going to open a model I've built already for creating users. So this is what a model looks like. You can see it's very simple. It's just what we call nodes and connectors or links. And this is very familiar to anybody who's used modeling tools like or diagramming tools like Visio or so on. What we're looking at here is we have said this model is going to cover 4 different scenarios. These scenarios are actually coming out of Swiftly. Let me just jump over to Swiftly here for a second. So here is Swiftly. This is a product we developed in Swiftly. There's some epics here. This is a epic number one is is manage users, manage user roles and permissions. You can see there's a series of epics here that were generated by Swiftly. And we're going to focus here on this one epic, manage users, and in particular, this create application users feature. So in this feature, as I open it, you'll see inside the feature, Swiftly has created 4 different scenarios. So create a new user, create a valid user, invalid user, audit that they think, make sure I can cancel a user, so on. So these 4 stories are actually now of what we're going to model. Okay. So if I switch back into our tool, you'll see these are the 4 stories, and we've actually brought those in from Swiftly. So just to take a quick look at the model, it's like create a new user, then that's going to create a display, and then we're going to enter user information and click save. This is how you read that. If I do all of those things, this thing says, if I do those things, then if it's valid, then it should get the saved. And if I save it, I can audit it. If the user's invalid, then I'm going to get an error. But if I'm creating a user and I click cancel, then I'm going to confirm that it was canceled, and then I'm going to verify that the cancel message appeared. Okay, so this is very simple. A real model, I'll show you here in a minute what a real scale model looks like, but this is enough to give you the idea. So what happens once we build this model is I can simply generate, okay, just by clicking that button. So in 1 second, what we did here was generate 3 tests, and we looked at all the variations that are possible within this diagram. So there are 16 different paths, and we're saying all 16 of those paths through this model can be combined into just 3 test cases. If if I take a quick look, this is one of our simpler views of what the test looked like. And you can see these are all the things, the nodes or the activities that can happen. And then there's 3 test cases here. So I can simply say, show me what test case 1 looks like. That's these things, do all those things. What does test case 2 look like that. Test case 3 looks like that. If I want to say, where am I testing that I saved correctly, I can look here and say, oh, that's in test case number 1. Okay, so this is what we call a matrix view. It's a very compact view of the testing. But much more useful, perhaps, is this various kinds of reports we can produce here. Like here's our BDD format report. This is, let me make this a little bigger for you. We just generated this report in a couple seconds, 1 second there. This is scenario number 1, given that the user does this and this and this, then this should happen and this should happen and so on. So these are basically for human consumption, but these are the 3 test cases that are required to test this particular feature and these 4 different scenarios we have. Okay, so very powerful stuff there. There's lots of other formats of the reports we can produce, including some outputs that you can import into other tools and so on. One of the things that's really powerful here is this requirement matrix. Let me go ahead and run this requirements matrix report for you. And this requirements matrix report, where to go here? This output is just in a spreadsheet format, but what it shows you is, this is a very simplified list, but this is a list of the 4 requirements or 4 scenarios that we brought in directly from Swiftly. So this information came from Swiftly. This column here tells you which test cases test each one of those scenarios. So this is saying test 1, test that, test 2, test 1, also test this one, test 3 is testing this, and so on. So in a real scale system, this would be a much longer report with all of your requirements and tell you which test cases tested which requirements and which requirements weren't tested at all. And this is a great way to manage and measure your coverage, your test coverage. Okay, so back to the model here. So again, that's pretty much it. There's a lot of detail on how you actually, like for instance, if I go to this node here, I can go into our editor, and here's where I'm telling the system, hey, these are all the requirements I'm testing. Which one is linking to this? Okay, and I can say, this one, this is the requirement that is being tested at this point in the model, and save that. And now I have instrumented this model to tell me coverage is going to happen wherever this node shows up in the test. Okay, so let's again, lots of details here we could dig into, but in this overview, I'm going to stop there. Let me jump over to automate. So when we jump over to automate, what we're going to see is a little different view, but these are all the test cases that are stored in our database here. So this particular folder here contains those 3 test cases that we are generating for that feature. And if I drill into this one test here, test number 1, this is showing me the step-by-step in keyword fashion, which we derive from the generated test, of what that test should do when it is automated. Okay, so the user selection option displays, user enters the information, and so on. So we've been able to kind of behind the scenes to connect these steps to actual snippets of automation code. So when I do that, if I click this executable button, you're going to see here in just 1 second, what happens is this has actually generated JavaScript code that was actually published or actually generated to a particular location so that the Repese automation tool can immediately run this test. So this code here could be Selenium, UFT, Redirects, any automation tool that you have that can create a script like this. We can generate, whether it's JavaScript, C++, XML, whatever format you want, we can configure our framework to do that. So what I'm doing here, I'm also creating, this is called a narrative, which is a human readable form of that exact same automation test. So if you want to look at what is my automation test doing, but I can't read the code, I can read this and I know exactly what my automated test is doing. Okay. So again, back here in the list, this is going to take me back. This is ability to manage and organize all of the tests that we've generated so that you can see what's automated, what isn't. You can modify, document these tests any way you want. So again, let me go back to model. In model, open that model again. No. So in this model, what's really powerful here is that if I change this model, if I add some nodes and do this, click, 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 I now have changed the logic and the rules of this model perhaps. Now all I have to do is generate one click of a button. It'll generate new updated tests for the change I made, and publish those tests to test management and generate the automation just simply by changing this model, which represents all the rules. Okay, so let me stop there. That's a pretty high level, pretty quick overview of IQM Studio. I'd be happy to talk to any of you further about it if you want more details, but for this recorded demo, I'm going to just end there.